You're listening to Rewriting the Rules, the podcast that dares to go deeper than training. I'm Bethany Bell, creator of the Canine Dialogue Dynamics Method, and this is where behaviour meets relationship, science meets the soul, and obedience takes a backseat to understanding. Let's change the conversation. Welcome back to Rewriting the Rules, the podcast for those of us who believe that dogs are more than just creatures to be trained, and that real connection begins with listening. I'm Bethany Bell, and today's episode is a quiet invitation. It's not a lecture, not a judgment, just a space to pause and reflect on something we often take for granted in the world of dogs. Why do we feel the need to train a dog to like something? Maybe it's the vet, the car, nail trims, being left alone, or meeting strangers. Maybe it's being brushed, being handled, or being asked to sit still or be told, don't be scared. And maybe just somewhere along the way, we've learned that if our dog doesn't like something, the answer is to train them to like it. And it sounds kind on the surface. And it's often done with really good intentions. We want them to feel safe. We don't want them to feel stressed. We want to avoid conflict, and often we're told just change their association, pair it with food, and build tolerance slowly. But today I want to ask gently, what lies beneath that urge? Is our goal really safety? Or is it silence? Is it comfort or compliance? And do we feel like we're failing if they still don't like it? Or have we simply never been shown another way? And we see it everywhere, don't we? A puppy doesn't like the vet, so we're told, bring treats, make it fun, help them learn that the vet is a good place. A rescue dog panics when they're left alone, so we're told to use desensitization. Start with 30 seconds, build it up slowly, pair absence with a chew. A dog growls when they're being brushed, or flinches when they're touched in certain places. So we're told, counter condition, make brushing equal peanut butter, teach them it's safe. And let me be clear, none of these ideas are inherently wrong. They come from a place of care, of wanting to help, of not wanting dogs to live in fear. But what we're often not taught is how to ask the deeper questions. Does this dog need me to change their association or to honour their boundary? Am I listening to what they're telling me? Or am I trying to change the story that they're telling? Is the goal mine or theirs? Because here's the thing, when we jump too quickly to training them to like it, we can miss the communication that's already there. A dog saying, I don't feel safe right now. A dog saying, this has been scary in the past. A dog saying, please slow down, I need time. And we turn that into behaviour to fix rather than a dialogue to enter. But there's something we often overlook in all of this. And that's the difference between helping a dog to tolerate something and trying to make them like it. Because let's be honest, if a dog genuinely likes something, they don't need us to train them to like it more. The issue isn't always about liking, it's often about coping. So when we say we're teaching the dog to like the vet, what we're really doing is asking, can you tolerate this experience without falling apart? And there's nothing wrong with support and tolerance. In fact, there are situations like vet visits, grooming, or care procedures, where we do need dogs to tolerate things, especially when their health and safety is at stake. But here's the key shift in the CDD method. Rather than using conditioning or desensitization to overwrite their discomfort, we help dogs build tolerance through trust, choices, and relational safety. We involve them in the process. We slow it all down, and we ask before we assume. And only in those true emergencies, those rare moments when something has to be done for their well-being and there's no time to prepare, do we then lean on what we have to hand in terms of comfort and kindness. And even then, we do it with empathy, reassurance, and the understanding that we will rebuild the trust afterwards. Because it's not about controlling dogs, it's about honouring them, even when life gets hard. And I just want to leave you with a few gentle questions. You don't have to answer them right now. You don't even have to agree with me. Just sit with them and just let them echo a little bit. What if a dog doesn't need to be trained to like something, but needs to feel safe enough to explore it in their own time? What if your dog isn't being stubborn, but is simply overwhelmed, uncertain, or quietly asking for space? And what if the problem isn't the behaviour that we see, but the assumptions we've made about what that behaviour means? What if we've been so focused on performance that we've forgotten to ask how the dog feels? And what if trust isn't built through repetition or reinforcement, but through presence, patience, and a willingness to listen? These are the kinds of questions the CDD method exists to explore, not with judgment, not with superiority, but with wonder and honesty and care. Because when we stop trying to fix dogs, we start to see who they truly are. And that changes everything. And now let's imagine it was you. Let's take a moment to shift the perspective, because sometimes the clearest way to understand our dogs is to imagine ourselves in their place. So just imagine being dropped into a new culture, a new home, a new language. You don't speak the language, you don't know the rules, you don't even know what's expected of you, and yet everyone else seems to think that you should. You're trying your best, but you get blank looks, stern words, maybe even a raised voice, and then they say, "She's just not listening." But you are listening. You just don't understand what any of it means yet. Or imagine someone says, "You're going to love the dentist," and then give you a treat every time you're poked with a sharp object. You don't love the dentist. You're just tolerating it because you don't have a choice, because you've learned that your fear isn't being heard. So you bury it and you get through it until one day maybe you don't. Our dogs are not trying to be difficult. They're trying to cope with our world, our pace, and our expectations. They don't need more commands. They need more connection. And so often what we label as reactive, resistant, or over the top is just a dog trying to say, "This is too much. I don't know how to handle this. Please help me feel safe." And when we stop and we see that, not just the behaviour, but the emotion behind it, that's when true change begins. Let's take something as ordinary as brushing. Maybe your dog doesn't growl or pull away, but you notice a little tension around their eyes. Their ears drop, or they sigh quietly. And you might think, "Oh, they're fine with it now." But what if instead of assuming, we pause and ask, "Would you like me to do this now or later?" And that pause will change the situation, because sometimes brushing is not the problem, not being asked is. And if you've been using treats to help your dog through difficult things, or you follow desensitization steps because you were told it was the kindest way, please know that this isn't about blame. Most people are just trying to do their very best with what they've been taught. And this isn't about throwing everything out. It's just about asking deeper questions. We don't need to shame the past to grow into something gentler. So what we do instead of trying to make dogs like everything is we slow down. We offer choices and we listen. And sometimes we say, "Would you rather take a break? Do you want to sniff instead of interact?" And those rare moments where something has to happen, like a vet procedure or an emergency, we acknowledge it honestly. We stay close and we offer comfort. We return to choice as soon as we can. It's not a protocol, it's a relationship, and that relationship is the teaching. But I want to go a little deeper into the idea of training dogs to like something, because at first glance, it does sound very well-meaning. After all, we don't want our dogs to feel uncomfortable. We want them to enjoy their grooming sessions and their vet visits, and enjoy being left alone or wearing a harness. But the issue is, liking is not something you can train. It's a natural emotional state, and it's something felt, not something performed. When we set out with a goal to train a dog to like something, what often happens is that we bypass what the dog is truly feeling. We become more invested in creating an illusion of comfort rather than building genuine emotional safety. And the danger in that is that we start pairing things, often food, praise, or games, with something that the dog is feeling uncomfortable with, hoping to override their natural instincts. And sometimes we might get a performance of tolerance, but we're not creating real joy or comfort. We're shaping compliance. Our dog might be eating, even showing playing behaviours. But that doesn't mean that the dog likes what's happening. These are not always indicators of safety. They can be signs of stress, appeasement, conflicted behaviour, or simply coping. And what's worse is when carefully trained associations begin to break down, which it often does. We see sudden setbacks that aren't really setbacks at all. They're the dog's original feelings finally surfacing, now harder to work with because we've unintentionally buried them. And that's why this distinction matters so much, because liking and tolerating are very different things. Liking is internal and emotional, and tolerating is situational and often functional. For example, I don't particularly like going to the dentist, but I can tolerate it. I have the cognitive ability to understand what's happening and why. I have a choice, and I can prepare, and I can advocate for myself. But your dog doesn't have that context unless you give it to them through relationship, dialogue, and emotional safety. If we try to leap straight to like this without acknowledging where they're starting from, emotionally, physically, and relationally, we risk violating trust and suppressing communication. And instead of asking, how can I make them like this? We need to be asking, how can I help them feel safe here? What can I do to ensure their autonomy is respected? And what unmet need is being revealed in this moment? Only when dogs feel emotionally safe can they begin to naturally enjoy something, and not because they were trained to, but because their body and their mind are no longer on alert. And that's real progress. And sometimes we don't need them to like it. Sometimes we just need to help them to tolerate it. But even that can be done through calm presence, choice, and relationship, not through extracting behaviours and masking discomfort. And there's another layer we really need to talk about. When we set out to train dogs to like something, what we often end up teaching without meaning to is how to mask how they truly feel. If the liking is being performed because it's paired with treats, toys, praise, or other rewards, then the behaviour becomes just that, a performance. The dog learns, if I wag my tail, take the treat, or play along, the situation continues and I get paid for it. But that doesn't mean the underlying emotion has changed. It just means the dog has learned to suppress their true feelings in order to meet the conditions that we've set. And here's the tricky part. When we stop training for liking, when we remove the pressure to perform, when we stop prompting them with rewards to get through the situation, when we stop reinforcing an image of comfort that isn't truly there, the dog will often stop performing it. They might suddenly refuse the treats. They might walk away instead of staying put. They might show clearer signs of stress or discomfort. So the untrained eye, this can look like regression. It can look like all the progress has been undone. But the truth is, this is not regression. This is huge progression. Because now the dog is telling you accurately and clearly how they actually feel about it without the layers of trained performance in the way. And this is gold. This is where real change starts. Because once you can see their honest feelings, you can respond to them and you can build genuine safety, not just the appearance of it. And it's interesting on reflection when we see dogs that have been trained through something. When the rewards stop coming, the behavior they were trained to do starts to decline. And this indicates that using rewards and conditioning didn't change the core emotions behind the behavior, because the behavior often returns or decreases. But think of it like this. Imagine that you hate public speaking. Every time you have to stand in front of a crowd, your palms sweat, your stomach churns, your voice shakes. Now imagine someone says, it'll be fine. Here, have a bit of money and just smile while you're up there. You force a smile and you take the money and you deliver the talk. To everyone watching, you probably look confident. You even get praised afterwards for enjoying it. But inside, nothing has changed. You still dread it. In fact, now you've learnt to hide your true feelings because that's what gets you through. And in one day, the money stops. There's no smile prompt. And instead of performing, you finally let it show. I really don't want to do this. To the outside world, it might seem like you've gone backwards. But actually, this is the first time you've been honest. The first time the people around you truly understand how much you disliked it. And now they can finally help you in a way that's meaningful. This is the same for dogs. Removing the performance lets us see the truth. And the truth is the only place real change can begin. When we stop teaching dogs to pretend they're okay, we start creating space to let them truly become okay. But let's look at tolerance. When we talk about tolerance in the context of our dogs, we're talking about their ability to cope with something, to accept its presence or experience it without becoming emotionally overwhelmed or distressed. It's important to note that tolerance is not the same as liking something. Liking something means it's enjoyable, sought after, and potentially even comforting. Tolerating something means I can be around this, I can go through this, and I can cope without harm, but it's not my favourite thing in the world. Tolerance is not suppression. It's not about teaching a dog to grit their teeth and push through something silently. That's masking discomfort. And masking discomfort eventually leads to emotional build-up, stress, and bigger reactions later. It's also not the same as just getting used to it. Dogs don't magically just get used to things in a healthy way if it feels unsafe. They adapt by creating coping strategies which may look like avoidance, shutdown, appeasement, or bursts of reactivity. But healthy tolerance develops when a dog feels safe. because they trust the environment and the person guiding them. They feel in control. They have the ability to choose distance, duration, and level of interaction, and they feel heard. Their communication is noticed and respected and not ignored or overridden. When tolerance is healthy, the dog's body language remains soft, their stress levels are manageable, and they're able to return to a calm baseline quickly afterwards. And in the CDD method, we build tolerance through dialogue and choice, not through repetitive exposure or by forcing positive associations. We give context, talking them through what's happening and why. We break things into manageable parts, not all in one go. And we watch their responses closely, adjusting the moment before they reach discomfort overload. We build trust in us rather than the event itself, so they know we will always be there to help them navigate it. Some things don't even need to be liked. Vet procedures, nail trims, ear cleaning, unfamiliar environments, these can all be tolerated, and that's a perfectly reasonable goal. Some dogs will end up liking these things, and others won't. The important thing is that dogs can tolerate them without their stress tipping over into fear or panic. But if we push for tolerance without meeting the dog's emotional needs, we risk creating a performance dog, one who appears okay but is privately distressed. And that's not ethical. It's not sustainable. Instead, we aim for truthful tolerance, where you can see on the outside reflects how they actually feel inside. And if we take some examples, for example, a vet waiting room. Unhealthy tolerance is a dog that is sitting perfectly still beside their person. They're not moving, they're not sniffing, they're not exploring, because they've been trained to stay with treats or cues, or maybe even force. Their body is stiff, their ears are pinned, and their breathing is shallow. They're not making a fuss, but inside their stress hormones are flooding. Healthy tolerance is a dog that is shifting their position now and then, glancing at the door, sniffing the air, maybe even looking at their person for a bit of reassurance. Their body remains soft, and if they need to move to a quieter corner, that choice is given to them. They cope because they trust the person to help them regulate, not because they've been conditioned to sit through it. And if we look at nail trims, unhealthy tolerance is the dog that stays still because they've been trained to hold position with rewards or restraint. They may lick their lips, yawn excessively, or avoid eye contact. Or maybe they just shut down, but they get through it. Afterwards, they hide when they see the nail clippers. Healthy tolerance is a dog that is given breaks between nails, the person uses calm narration, and the dog can step away briefly if needed. Over time, the dog learns, this isn't my favourite thing, but it's predictable, gentle, and I'm safe. There's no hiding the next time, maybe even a calm walk into the room. And what about walking past triggers? Unhealthy tolerance is a dog that passes another dog on a walk without reacting, but only because they're hyper-focused on a treat or a cue. Instead, their heart is racing, and they've learnt to mask rather than regulate. They may explode later at something minor. Healthy tolerance is where a dog notices the other dog, pauses, processes, and the person calmly offers a choice. Shall we go this way instead? The dog moves on without bracing, panting, or tightening up, and the calm after the moment shows that they truly managed it well. And these examples illustrate the same core idea. True tolerance feels different because it's built on trust and not suppression. When you get it right, the dog isn't pretending to be okay. They are okay. And before we move on, take a moment to think about your own dog or dogs that you've worked with. Can you remember a time when you thought, they're fine, they're sitting still, but you later realised that they were quietly overwhelmed? Have you ever seen a dog regress when you stopped using treats or cues to help them cope, only to realise you were finally seeing how they truly felt? When you picture a dog tolerating something, what does their body actually look like? Are they breathing softly, moving naturally, able to glance around, or are they still, stiff and holding themselves in? And if you swapped places with them, would you want to be trained to appear okay or supported so that you actually are okay? True tolerance isn't about performing calmness. It's about feeling calmness. And when we give dogs the space, choices, and security that they need, they don't just get through the experiences, they get through it well. And one of the most important distinctions that we can make, both as dog guardians and as professionals, is the difference between tolerance and fear. A dog who is tolerating something is saying, I can cope with this right now, I may not love it, but I'm okay. And their body will often tell you with softer eyes, normal breathing, relaxed posture, small moments of curiosity, or shifting position. They may look to you for reassurance, but they're just not frozen. Fear, on the other hand, is the body's protective alarm system. The nervous system shouting, "This is too much. I need safety right now." The signs can be subtle, from stiffness, pinned ears, holding their breath, refusing food, looking away but not moving, licking their lips, yawning, or freezing completely. In more obvious cases, fear becomes flight, barking, or even defensive behaviour. And the problem is, if we confuse fear for tolerance, if we look at a still dog and assume they're fine, we might push them further than they can handle. And when that happens, not only do we risk damaging trust, but we also teach them to mask their feelings to get through it until they can't anymore. True tolerance is built on safety. It's a foundation that we lay slowly, with respect for how the dog feels in the moment and not how we want them to feel. But one of the most common misunderstandings in dog behaviour work is the belief that you can reward fear away. The idea is that if I give my dog treats while they're scared, they'll learn to associate this scary thing with something positive and then the fear will go away. But it's just not that simple. Fear is not a thought that you can bargain with. It's an emotional and physiological state. When the body is flooded with stress hormones, the logical brain takes a backseat and the survival brain takes control. And this means that the part of the brain that processes cause and effect, the bit that can make an association between the treat and trigger, is often not accessible in that moment. You can hand a scared dog the tastiest food in the world, and yes, they might eat it, but that doesn't mean they now feel safe. Sometimes they'll take the food despite being scared, and other times they won't take it at all because the body is too locked into fight, flight, or freeze. When we rely on rewards to fix fear, what often happens is we teach the dog to mask it. They learn, if I perform this behaviour, I get the reward, but the emotional root of the fear stays buried, and when the reward disappears or the situation escalates, the fear resurfaces exactly as it was, and sometimes worse. Overcoming fear is not about pushing dogs through it. It's about changing the emotional landscape entirely. That comes from choice, safety, distance, and gradual experiences that are led by the dog's readiness and not our timetable. And if we go back to the analogy of having a fear of public speaking, if you imagine that someone said to you, "I know you're terrified, but if you just go up there and talk, I'll give you £100. You might push yourself to do it for the money and you might smile and act confident in those few minutes because you know there's a reward at the end. But inside, your heart is still pounding. Your body is still screaming, this isn't safe. The £100 did not take the fear away. It just gave you the incentive to hide it. And the next time someone asks you to speak on stage, that same fear will come rushing back because nothing inside of you changed. But now picture a different approach. Instead of bribing you, someone gently invites you to watch from the side of the stage first. No pressure. You just observe. Next time, maybe you hold the microphone off stage. Get used to it. Get used to the feel of it. And then perhaps you practice saying a few words in an empty hall when no one's watching. You get to decide when you've had enough. You get to choose if you want to continue or not. Over time, your body starts to believe this is safe. Your confidence grows naturally, not because you were paid to perform, but because the fear itself has dissolved. And that's the difference between rewarding a dog through fear and actually helping them through fear. But let's look at the only when necessary principle. There's a really important distinction here. Teaching tolerance should be reserved for situations your dog genuinely cannot avoid, things that are essential for their health, safety, or well-being. For example, a vet examination, urgent grooming task, like removing a painful mat from their fur, being carried into the car during an emergency evacuation. These moments are not optional. They are in the best interest of the dog, even if they feel uncomfortable at the time. In those situations, we work with the dog to help them cope as gently as possible, guiding them through tolerance in a way that preserves trust. But here's where we go wrong far too often. We ask dogs to tolerate things they don't actually need to experience, things that are totally avoidable and have no real benefit to them. And we often justify it because we want them to get used to it, because it's convenient to us. But when we do that, we're not respecting their needs. We're asking them to suppress discomfort for something they didn't need to face in the first place. It's like making a person tolerate standing in freezing water when actually they could have just walked on the dry path next to it. Every time we ask for tolerance, we need to ask ourselves, is this truly in their best interest? Is this unavoidable for their health and safety? Or am I asking this because it fits my plans, my expectations, or my convenience? When the answer is that it can be avoided, the ethical choice is to avoid it and instead spend that energy creating experiences that they do enjoy. And it's also part of human nature to put our expectations and conveniences above others in many different ways. It's not placing blame or making anyone seem like a bad person for thinking it or doing it, but it's just when we know better, we do better. So it's acknowledging it and then changing it, but not punishing ourselves for even having the thought or perhaps what we've done in the past and making ourselves seem like a terrible person for doing it. It's just about learning and moving on. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want you to remember this. Tolerance is a tool, but it's a tool that should be used with care, intention, and compassion. When we teach tolerance ethically, we're helping our dogs navigate the unavoidable moments in life without damaging their trust in us. But when we overuse it or use it for things that could have been avoided, we risk eroding the very relationship we've worked so hard to build. And it comes down to discernment, asking ourselves, why am I asking my dog to tolerate this? Because every time you make that choice thoughtfully, you're not just shaping behaviour, you're protecting a dog's emotional well-being. Next week, we're going to be diving into the subject that's just as layered and just as often misunderstood, the use of crates. We'll be exploring their history, the intended purpose, the way they were marketed, and more importantly, whether they're truly in the best interests of the dogs that we love. It's going to be a conversation that challenges a lot of what you've heard before. But until then, thank you for being here, for thinking differently, and for walking alongside your dog and not above them. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep rewriting the rules. See you next Thursday.